Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. We're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Tuesday, January the 7th. And thanks for joining me. I really do appreciate it. It is a serious privilege. It is actually an honor, and I'm kind of spoiled because I got to kiss my kids 5 seconds ago before I hit the button to go live, and here we get to go. We're a couple minutes late for one reason and one reason only, and that's because I was just trying to cram pack a bunch of stuff in, and I'm getting spicy over on social media, and I can't help it. We have a moment, and we're things, and no one is happier than me. Probably, well, maybe not no one, but man, I am certainly in the top tier of people who are happiest to be wrong about that. I can't help it. I really can't. Today, we're going to get into a couple things. We're going to talk about whitewashing some of Biden's legacy. We're going to talk about some of the things that they're kind of trying to cover up about it. Some things that he did that were not terrible. I think that's also worth doing. And this kind of weird moment that we're in, this moment where we can really embrace how different it is now 4 years later. I've been walking back in time. I've been walking back to my suspension, which basically was the first few months, like when Biden actually got going, and what that administration did to my family, what they did to a lot of your families, the way that we felt. So we're going to kind of do a little retrospective. I hope you will forgive me for that. The real legacy of the Biden administration was a failure in Afghanistan to our veterans, a failure to do the job that they were put into office to do, which is simply to serve and protect the American people, to make sure that the people that they represent as a commander-in-chief, man, that guy just dropped the ball, and potentially it was on purpose. But even if it wasn't on purpose, even if it was a complete, just they got overwhelmed by circumstances, where's the accountability? It's not coming. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of the things that they're trying to do to Donald Trump still, which is ongoing. Let's see, Justin Trudeau, he just walked out. I'm going to chalk it up as a win. I'm going to call that a Trump victory, whether you like it or not. And I'll tell you why I think that is the case. I think that the moment has not just affected the United States, the moment that is the post-November 5, 2024 moment. It is an international phenomenon. It's certainly a continental thing for North America. So let's do all that stuff in just 1 second here before we do. You should never get too comfortable, folks. You should never think that it is all over, because it can change, and you know that. We're in the crunch time, new administration about to be sworn in. But as great as that is, it also means that enemies have a few days left, and man, we know that's the case. They will be doing some shenanigans in the background. Could be a cyber attack, could be an invasion, God forbid, nuclear strike. We were worried about that with the drones, all kinds of other weird things happening. Kicked off this year with a bang. So while the bureaucrats are doing things in Washington, we don't take any chances. That's why I have an emergency food supply. Mine comes from my Patriot Supply. PrepareLikeKyle.com is how you go get there. Right now, they're offering $100 off. It's the 3-month emergency food kit. That's the exact same one I have. I have 2 of those in a closet. It takes up the whole closet. That's okay. 2,000 calories a day for 3 whole months. That's enough to feed at least 1 adult, maybe 2. It's plenty to get you through a prolonged emergency. All their food is stored so it lasts up to 25 years in storage, and they come with a rugged, weatherproof bucket. PrepareLikeKyle.com. PrepareLikeKyle.com. Right now, you can order your 3-month emergency food kit. You can go there and get $100 off, which is definitely a decent option. They have the best price per calorie for whatever it's worth, and that's why we keep it in our house. It's the thing that we swear to. You guys, you can find the link in the show descriptions. Again, emergency food from PrepareLikeKyle.com and the folks over at My Patriot Supply. Let's dive in. feels like that like was really natural. I don't know why, but like that's a relatively new thing. Do you know we are on episode 460? I'm kind of self-serving today. I can't help it. 460 episodes. Got into a little back and forth with a guy that has been showing up on podcasts. It's very interesting to me when I start seeing former bureau executives step out and say, look at me. I know what's wrong with the FBI. So let's take them at face value and then deconstruct that right away, because it is a little bit self-serving for me. Folks that have spent time in senior management within the Bureau, my ex-girlfriend, as we like to call it here, if you're new to the program, that's the lexicon we use. It's like an abusive ex-girlfriend. And the joke that I made with Ron Coleman, who's a lawyer in the Dillon firm, I made this on his podcast, and he told me I was too glib to be an FBI agent. The FBI is like the kind of girlfriend that you walk out one day, you go to work, and when you come back home, she's taken all of your worldly possessions. First of all, you should probably be married before you're living together. I know that now. Many of you all understand what I'm saying. The old ways were better. But let's just say that you have a girlfriend that you might have to leave. And you come home and she's thrown all of your stuff out on the lawn. All of it. Like all of your clothing, your suits, your shoes, your television. And it's all covered in kerosene and on fire. I don't know where she got the kerosene. And you're going, dear God Almighty. And she's saying, why don't you love me? And you're like, you just burned all my crap, lady. What are you doing? You can't do that. I can't come back. Like, no. She changed the locks. She's kicking you out. Why don't you love me? And so you leave, and then she's calling you up. She's like, I think we should get back together. I think you should just work through it with me. We need to go to counseling. It's like, no, you need to go to counseling. You suck. That's the FBI in a nutshell. That's the ex-girlfriend analogy. That's why we use it. There are people out there that spent time in senior management, and some of them spent a lot of time in senior management. There's a guy named Chris Paiho. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he doesn't know my name either. He was trying to jump on a little bit of things. We've been talking to Sean Ryan of late, we being me, Garrett. We've been kind of sharing some background on there because he's dealing with the Bureau. He's a little bit concerned about it. I don't blame him. Nobody should trust what our ex-girlfriend does. You saw how they treated Garrett. You saw how they treated me, how they treated Steve. You saw how they treated regular Americans, guys like Marcus Allen, who served this country. They were called, insider threats, people who might betray the nation. And when you treat your employees like that, who you actually know, how much will they screw you up? How much will they come after you? And there's countless examples, and they are actually on the political left and the political right. It's the little bit of criticism that I have for Dinesh D'Souza in the movie Police State, which I helped with. The reason we criticize it is because it actually is a much bigger problem than weaponized government going after just the political right. They'll go after anybody for money. They're not even principled. That's the worst part of weaponized government. It actually just serves itself. The self-licking ice cream cone analogy is so common for folks who have worked around government. The government exists for its own purposes. It doesn't go out there necessarily to achieve an end. What it does is it achieves its end, which is self-preservation. Steve hit it perfectly on the head last Friday when he talked about Skynet. And so I'm getting into this specifically because a guy who had 13 years in senior executive service. If you're familiar with this program, senior executive service, you already know that's the deep state. That's the administrative state. Those are the people who have progressed off the regular pay scale. The regular pay scale is called General Schedule, I think, GS, from 1 to 15. If you're a government employee and you are SES, you're considered a senior executive. Why do we have senior executives in the Bureau? Why do we have senior executives in any executive agency? They have a senior executive. It's called the president, and they don't serve that person because they've been in government longer than any president ever will be. This guy, Chris Paiho, or whatever his name is, was the EAD of science and technology for the FBI. And he's out there. He's written a book, which you can go buy, and I don't recommend, and I don't think any of you will. He wrote a book. He's doing a podcast circuit. He's been on Mike Glover's podcast. I like Mike Glover. He's been on Andy Stump's podcast. I don't know Andy, but I respect the hell out of what he did and the kind of work that he did in the SEAL teams. Okay. They've also done some really good work for veterans. And this guy's going out there and touting himself. I know how to solve the problem. Bro, let me put you to shame. And I mean the word shame. You should be absolutely ashamed. You should not be willing to show your face in public. That's the hubris of our senior executive service. And it's not just the FBI. I know that to be true. If you were at the top of an agency, and you are as an executive assistant director, let me just give you the org chart. Like for those of you who don't know how the FBI works, which is everybody. But if you listen to this podcast, you have at least a passing interest in it, I would have to say, because you're listening to a former FBI agent. The top is called the director. We all know who that is. That's Chris Wright. The second is called the deputy director. That's Paul Abate. He's also garbage. He's got to go. I actually don't know who the associate deputy or the assistant. It's either the assistant or the associate deputy director is. That's the number 3. So it's 1, 2, 3 in a straight line. And then the 4th person is 5 people, actually. It breaks out to 5. That's the first time when the chart branches. And those people are called EADs, executive assistant directors. They're in charge of what are called branches. Appropriately enough, it's the first branch. They have thousands and thousands of employees, and they have exactly 3 people above them. They really have 1 person above them, the deputy director, and the ADD is the person that kind of like hands out what the DD wants to do. Okay? This guy was essentially a functional like number 2 in the FBI. In reality, a number 4. Nobody above him except one thing. And you tell me that you now have a solution? Go F yourself, man. This is going to be ubiquitous in Donald Trump's situation. In his administration, there are a ton of people that are like, hey, I used to do this. That's where he fell short in the first one. If you don't know, he brought in the supposed experts. It is our prayer. It is my prayer that he avoids these traps, that he stays away from the permanent Washington stuff. Okay? Let's talk about wins, because that was a long-winded way of saying that this guy's an idiot. And I actually have some more stuff we're going to talk about a little bit later on. I actually want to show you the culture. Some of you have not seen this before. If you're new to the program, thank you so much for joining and welcome. I'm going to get a little bit more personal today and a little bit more self-interested than I often do, because it's just not my jam. But when I realized that so few people know what it was that we saw and what I saw and some of the things that I said, it debunks anything that people say, oh, you're a Fed. Like, I built that with my hands behind you. If you're looking on the screen, if you've never seen our physical set of the podcast, check it out. It's kind of fun, only because it was a really cool project for me to do. It was a thing that I got to do for myself. This is the way that I see myself on the screen. It's very self-centered that I'm telling you all this. But the reason I tell you that is because it debunks any narrative. Go to the live chat and see people who've watched me move from a trailer where I was on an extension cord to sitting in a house, which, by the way, we look like we're in a pro set. This is just a regular room. Like, there's a regular cheap carpet on the floor. There's a ceiling fan over my head. You just can't see it because I turn it all off and I do fancy lighting. All right, here we go. Donald Trump wins. They are coming. And again, the first big win, November 5th. That was a domino, and a big one at that. And I think it is a direct line to things like this. Here's Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, Instagram, the company called Meta. They are dumping the fact checkers. Now, if you pay attention to guys like Mike Schellenberger, if you listen to people like Matt Taibbi, if you listen to Mike Benz, if you're listening to people that are in the world, Tracy Beans was talking about it, the censorship apparatus that existed was a governmental intelligence community, but wider government and NGO control mechanism that they were using on media. And when those shackles are thrown off, the American people are able to say the thing that they want, which is why we have, let's say, not perfect freedom, but a way better option with the X platform that Elon Musk has picked up. There's a reason why I have no interest. I also just don't like the format of Instagram. I'm not like take a picture of myself with ducky face. That doesn't do it for me. It's very narcissistic and self-centered. It can be fun. I've got some clips that I pulled from Instagram. I think they're amusing, but I despise the way that they write their code. I also know that I think we stopped broadcasting. I have to look over here on our broadcast software. I don't think I broadcast to Facebook anymore. I used to, and we would get 1 to 2 people to watch it. And every once in a while, somebody would comment. Meanwhile, how are we doing over here on Rumble? We got 1,200 people watching right now. We'll get as many as 2,000 people watching it at the time that we do it, which is not necessarily the most convenient because a lot of people are at work. Okay. So catching live shows, we have live shows that are as big as some of the biggest programs on Rumble, which is a platform where we can grow. At least we have an opportunity to grow. All right. He's done something pretty tremendous. He's walking away. They want to get rid of the fact checkers, and they're going to make massive changes in sort of their algorithmic boost to try to moderate their policies. This is a win for regular people. I think it's a win. Here he is talking about it. This does not look like something that maybe he always wanted to do this. Maybe he was pressured in by the intelligence community to do the thing that they're doing right now. So maybe he's going back to his core mission. Or, allow me to say this, Mark Zuckerberg is not dumb. He's incredibly wealthy, and he lives and dies based on how government regulation comes for him. And if he's on the wrong side of a Donald Trump, who has the control of the Senate and the House, who has a Mike Johnson that's going to step in line, and hopefully we can get the rest of the Senate jump in line as well and confirm the picks, you're on the wrong team then. And he's not dumb. So he's looking at that and going, it's time to change. They go like this. They test the winds. They lick the finger. They hold it up. They feel the direction. Okay, there's the wind. We're going to face right into it, and we're going to do the right thing. It's the right thing for their company. It just turns out that it also helps us too. So here's Mark Zuckerberg talking about a massive change in the way that they want to do business.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today. because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US.
Now, why would he have to do that? He just said that there's a cultural change. This is not self-initiated. This is reading the tea leaves and seeing that the opportunity exists to probably rebrand, to try to get people back because they become less relevant. Americans are aware of that throttle. And if you're watching over on places like X, which he specifically mentions, and I spend an awful lot of time over there, way more than I want to. And in the last couple of days, it's been even more because it's just been kind of wild. It's where the conversation exists. It's where a guy like Sean Ryan, who has a following of 1 million people almost over there, who has one of the biggest podcasts in America, releases something really big. When he wants to go address the public and say, hey, you guys have questions about it, let's open it up. Let's have a public square debate. I happen to be part of that debate. We had 35,000 people pop in, that can directly listen and potentially even have a conversation with the folks that are on there and ask questions. They certainly did it after the fact. 35,000 people doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the number of people that are interested in like a state that move an election one way or another. The most involved people, the most interested people for relevant information are getting it in places like that. And they're not going to Facebook and getting it. They're getting garbage in Facebook. I don't even know how to manage it because it doesn't even seem useful. And it's so censored. As he said, 1%. Come on, bro. We know better. This is how you become the media, as you guys are saying in the chat. Here, I'll throw you guys on the screen. You guys are part of this. You guys are part of this program. You'll notice, what do we have over there? We have our friends on YouTube. YouTube's probably going to have to realize this too. They are going to get destroyed. They will get ruined because people know that they are being censored. It's obvious to them. And those of you on our Rumble chat see the same thing. By the way, I can't get them in the same box, so I just share you guys on the screen simultaneously. But I want you to know you're part of this program. You're part of the interactivity of it. This is something different. There's no cable news network out there that is able to do the things that we're doing right now, even on a simple podcast that's run by one guy. And that's why cable news will go away, at least in that format. Radio will still continue, by the way. The thing that I kind of grew up on, that my father made his career in, it will continue because it's interactive, because it's immediate, it's imminent, and it is now, as is social media that works. But this produced crap, had a conversation yesterday, literally, had it with a huge podcaster, and they're like, I get offered media hits and I don't go on it. F them. Why would I waste my time? And the answer is, why would you waste your time on 2 minutes where you're going to be inside of somebody else's rigid format that is simply there to just stand between BlackRock commercials? The alternative is doing what we're doing right now. Here's another meta story. I think it's interesting. It's a worthwhile thing. One of the things that I used to do on this podcast a lot, and I will go back to some of them because I think the messages need to be repeated. I don't like repeating myself. It's because I actually believe in you as an audience. Once I share the message, it's yours. And you get to do what you want with it. You can ignore it, you can listen to it, whatever. But sometimes it does bear repeating. Meta smart glasses worn in New Orleans by the attacker that actually went and drove down people. They're bringing up some concerns about privacy, apparently. This is a story coming from NBC. Trust the source, choose the screen. They're so silly. The glasses that Meta produced, so that's Mark Zuckerberg's company, allows people to capture video, stream video. It's got a Wi-Fi capability, as you guys informed me. They're stylish looking, and you can go out there and do things like, I don't know, like reconnaissance runs before you do a terrorist attack. So that makes people go, oh, no. Well, this technology is not that new, but its functionality is new and higher. And it reminds us one thing that we should talk about. First of all, it's worth recognizing what these glasses look like. They still have to have a lens. They're not hidden lens cameras, although those exist as well. These are like pretty obviously, they have lenses that are where the little screw holes would be on the upper side of the eyebrow. You have zero reasonable expectation of privacy. That's the legal term. That is the way that law enforcement looks at it. But it's also the way that you might consider broadcast media looks at it. Reasonable expectation of privacy, REP. If you're a Bongino listener, and I know many of you are, this is not a new concept to you, but it is worth hammering home. As you walk out in public, somebody photographs you, they can do whatever they want with it. They see you at a Costco walking around in a private area, and they're not told to stop filming, that's theirs. You want to say something stupid, get into a fight on the street because you want to have a road rage incident, that can be broadcast too. No expectations of privacy is actually cleaner, but the word is reasonable expectation of privacy. You're in public and you're acting in a public forum, so your information is now public. They can record your words, they can record your actions, they can record your face. Okay? Once you know that, then you start behaving differently. Like some of us don't like to go into crowds. We don't like going to places where there are cameras. We don't like going to places where there are dumb people who act dumb, because you might get caught on camera surrounded by dumb people and then be judged accordingly. These Meta glasses are a good reminder that that's what's going on. I guess that's kind of a nice little segue to talk about people who act dumb. Before we do, let me just say a quick little plug for one of our affiliate programs. We have sponsors and we have affiliates. You guys may not know how that works. These people only pay us if you decide to go do it. I'm never telling you to go spend your money somewhere unless it's interesting to you. And one of the things that we spend our money here on this house, in fact, my wife told me yesterday we got to spend more, is on Matt Hat Jerky. You can go to Matt, M-A-T-T, Hat, H-A-T, Jerky, spelled out, .com/Kyle. Use the promo code Kyle. It should save you 20%. We get a little cut as well. And what happens is you get an outstanding product that is a jerky that is made from really good beef. And the one I always do is the USDA prime beef. So you get a higher cut of beef. It's like about $1 premium per bag. I buy the 12-ounce bags. I like black truffle and I like garlic. I think it's roasted garlic is what it's called. Those are the two that I order. We order them in bulk. We order them like in poundage in this house. And one of the reasons I like it is because sometimes it's the only protein that my 3-year-old will eat because he's kind of a weird little dude and we love him to pieces. But like last night, he only ate steak. He wouldn't eat anything else. He wouldn't eat his potatoes. So be it. If your kid's only going to eat meat, you're not losing. Mad Hat Jerky is the kind of meat that my kid will eat. So I order that up. He takes it as a snack. I also use it because I'm doing this carnivore type diet and it's been very helpful for my clarity. Even though I'm not getting a lot of sleep, I'm getting the right sort of protein nutrition and that kind of thing. So check out matthatjerky.com/Kyle, matthatjerky.com/Kyle. Let's jump into this quick story here because I'm calling it a Donald Trump win and it has to do with being genuine in public. This guy is not. This is Justin Trudeau. This is an awesome photograph, by the way. New York Times ran this photograph, so I really appreciate it. He's walking away from the podium, but I took the headline from The Independent, which is another British newspaper who cares about things in Canada, also known as Snow Mexico. Justin Trudeau, he says that Trump said many Canadians are in love with the idea of being the 51st American state, and the Prime Minister of Canada, also known as Snow Mexico, has resigned. I've got his little resignation. I've got a little analysis that was done by somebody that I really love. One of my favorite Canadians, Jordan Peterson, someone that I have paid money so that my wife could go sit in a lecture. I don't know why we did this, but it reminds us of some of the funny stuff that happened in 2019 and 2020. Some of you also remember having come, like watching Jordan Peterson come on the scene. A lot of that was because of the genuine message, because you know that man believes it. He's so passionate about it. Here's somebody that's never been passionate about anything that we've seen publicly announcing his resignation. Again, Trump win. Will we see Canada as the 51st state? I doubt it. But I can't rule it out because I didn't even think we were going to have an election.
Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
The claim put out here by The Independent that this is the first liberal beast to be felled by Donald Trump. That is not true. That's not true at all, is it? Be honest about this, media. He got rid of Joe Biden, also known as Joe Biden. He got rid of Kamala Harris, that drunken white wine non-mom who was hanging out in the Senate and then became the vice president with the hopes that she was going to be the highest office in the land holder, and then not even close. Not even close, because she was terrible. Despite $1 billion spent in 100 days. And just so much money spent to prop this up. He felled Hillary Clinton, who now got her consolation prize the other day. She got the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He's slayed a lot of liberal beasts. But they're not really liberals. They're not liberal. They don't like freedom. There's nothing about freedom that we saw in Canada. Did we? Those poor Canadian truckers? The snow Mexicans that we like? The ones that were driving around doing the hard work? Like, snow Mexicans are our natural allies. They live up in our attic. That's what they do. So we don't have a problem with the Canadian people. We have ones that are the tyrants. And this guy's a tyrant. That's what he was. COVID tyranny hit them hard, and we all watched it. And nobody liked it that was a free citizen, that thought that, hey, I have rights as a human being. I have innate rights because God gave them to me, and this government's job is to protect them, not to tell me what to do, whether I can go to church or not. How dare you? So he sowed the seeds of his own demise. He held on to it as long as he could, but people were celebrating in freaking inflatable hot tubs. I do like this about the snow Mexicans. They have the funniest, most like positive, loving protests of anything. They're already really nice people. If you've ever had a big disagreement with a Canadian, they just apologize at the end of it for it. They just say, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. You're like, man, I'm sorry you don't too. But they really are nice people. You can't help it. I spent up time in Montana, and you'd see them, and they come across the border. I spent time in the Northeast, and you see them as well. It's great. It's great that these people have now got a chance to have a boot taken off their neck. Here's Jordan Peterson's analysis of this. It's about a genuine conversation. Again, I think this ties back to what Mark Zuckerberg said. I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg is lying. He kind of looks like a fish. His face is very fish-like, which is to say it lacks human emotions. Whether he's autistic or he's just cultivated this sort of like sociopathic, visage, I just don't know. That's not even the way you pronounce that word. Here's Jordan Peterson giving analysis on people who lie, and then we're going to play a couple liars that have been doing that to us, because we all know these people. Even the people on the left should actually recognize it. Some of them actually do in the media space. So here we go. This is Piers Morgan. He's terrible too.
Well, I watched his resignation speech this morning, and I thought, I've never heard Justin Trudeau say a true word in his entire life. I'm a pretty astute clinician, and if I pay attention, I can tell the difference between someone who's, merely wrong and trying his best, and someone who just lies with every single breath. And he is definitely a person like that. Everything he does is an act. And his resignation speech was an act. You could tell because today he started out with the words, well, everyone knows that I'm a fighter and I don't give up. And I mean, Piers, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine myself ever saying something like that in public. Who would say that?
I know.
I'm a fighter.
Especially as you're giving up.
Really?
Especially as you're literally giving up.
Well.
It's like, I quit, but I'm not a quitter. Yes, you are. You're literally quitting in front of our eyes.
It's pretty funny. I'm not a big fan of Piers Morgan, and I think he's terrible, and he hates guns, and so he's like the opposite of what American liberals should even be about, and he's certainly not a liberal in my mind, but not wrong. He's calling out people more and more frequently because there's an audience for it. You watch these people, they're doing the same thing that Zuckerberg does. They lick the finger, they hold it up in the air, they find out which way the wind blowing, and Piers Morgan knows that controversial opinions, which is to say things that are not hard left, things that are semi-moderate and totally reasonable, they resonate with more people than lunatic opinions. We've seen that horrible Chris, what's his name? It'll come back to me. Brother was the governor of New York. You guys will put it in the what is his name? Acosta? That's not his name. That's Jim Acosta. Sorry, he's terrible still. But you'll watch these guys, like they'll pivot and they'll start sounding awfully reasonable. And you're like, oh, you do actually know that you were full of crap before this, don't you? You were just playing something, it should be a credibility destroyer. You know who never stops? Cuomo, that's his name, Chris Cuomo. He's actually kind of pivoted to sort of semi-rationality. Even MSNBC, they can't help it. NBC News, they're hard left. They're even starting to ask some of these questions the way journalists used to do. The way you're supposed to question these people in authority and say, hey, by the way, you said something. It doesn't line up with what you're saying now. How do you respond to that? And let them lie to you again. And then you just go, that sounds like a lie, like you're full of crap. One of the best of the liars, like sort of this is a beast that will be slain, I believe, by a Donald Trump. If nothing else, he will push him into an irrelevant corner. Watch his face as he does this interview. He's just mouthing the words, like the sub-audible demonizations that live in his little demon head. Just the awful lies that he's going to have to spill. Here he is talking about how Kash Patel's the problem because some guy drove a truck into people in New Orleans. Again, we showed you the article yesterday. I want to show you the video of it because it's quite funny.
Let's talk quickly about the president-elect's cabinet picks. Kash Patel for FBI director. That comes against the backdrop of this latest terror attack in New Orleans. You, of course, serve on the Judiciary Committee. If Kash Patel is confirmed, will you be able to work with him? You've been quite critical of him.
Well, first of all, Kash Patel should not be confirmed. And I think the terrorist attack in New Orleans and my heart goes out to those who...
And allow me to just not talk about the thing that you asked me. The question is, can you work with a guy that you don't agree with? That's a yes or no question, it actually turns out. Here's the answer from me. Yes, I've worked with people I don't agree with. So have you. All of you have. You know how you know? Like, how many of you are married? You don't always agree with your spouse. It's natural to not agree with another human being if they are not inside your head. In fact, it's probably natural not even to agree with yourself sometimes. How many of us say, what's going on there? And you go, well, I'm conflicted. What does that mean? It means I believe one thing and I believe another thing at the same time, and I'm trying to make them make sense in my own head. Can you get along with Kash Patel and do your job? Well, let me talk about the people that were victims in New Orleans and how it underscores the fact that this man should not be confirmed. Screw you, Adam Schiff. You're nasty. You're a liar. Your time is over. Americans are going to get sick of this. Even the hard left is going to get, they're going to get sick of losing at some point if they keep doing this. Because they can't win. You can't win when truth is standing against you. It will destroy you. There's another liar. Chuck Schumer. He was the Senate Majority Leader. Now he's the Minority Leader, right? It's real slick. Slick old Chuck. Trying to just kind of dance. They dance and weave between the raindrops. The problem that these guys are trying to deal with right now is that current everyday media, whether it be X, whether it be podcasts, whether it be whatever it is that's not on these little like produced segments that you see from network television, these things are going to hold them accountable. They have not adapted to the game yet. That's why Mark Zuckerberg is doing what he's doing. He's reading the leaves. He's feeling the wind and he's going, oh, something has changed. You know, we always talk about this stuff in the sense of like an algorithm. If you're watching social media, the algorithm changed. It's promoting this. It's promoting that. The algorithm of the world has changed in the last couple years. It started with the COVID lockdowns. It actually probably started with the introduction of COVID and the fear mongering that happened in 2020. That's part one. Part two was the government overreaching. And we watched them move goalposts in real time. And we went, hey, we're the meme of, what's that guy's name? We're the meme of the actor from Titanic. Why am I, like, my names are gone? You can tell I haven't been sleeping. He points at the screen. He's like, I know that. You moved the goalposts on me. You moved them. So now we're not going to listen to you anymore. And then there's a kind of a slow buildup where everyone goes like, we're watching, we're calling you out, we're going to call you out, we're going to call you out, we're going to vote you out. Chuck Schumer with some cool lies. Didn't he tell us that Biden was doing great? I'm going to give you one thing that Biden did that wasn't bad. And then we're going to go back to the other thing. One thing. Here's Chuck Schumer trying to defend Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah. Thank you, guys. This is why the chat's there. Hold on. Let me put you guys on the screen. There you are. Leonardo DiCaprio. If I wait long enough, you guys will come up with the answer of the person that can't do it. It's like usually I'm the guy that knows the answer, by the way. My wife will be like, it's the person in the movie with the thing and he has a potato. And I'm like, oh, I know who that is. You guys are that for me today because I'm just having that moment. Here's Chuck Schumer. Okay. It's our video clip number 6. He's dealing with lies that he made and listen to him not address them at all. He just assumes that you're going to just forget about it because you don't have the memory. Right now, there is a collective memory between social media and all of you. And we are all working together to crowdsource answers that hold these people accountable, and they don't know what the hell to do with it. It's too much for them to try to overcome, and they can't relearn it. They're too slow. All right, here it is.
I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
Look, we didn't. And let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation.
One of the blah, 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 blah. I'm not answering your question. Why? Because I'm a liar. Like, here's the real question. Ready? Let's do this in a role play form. Senator Schumer, it sounds like you lied to the American people. She said misled, but that's a nice word for lying. It sounds like you lied to the American people about the cognitive status of the president. What do you say to people who say that to you? No, because the president had a really good agenda and he had a lot of other things that we did. And so look at all the great work we've done. F you, bro. We saw you. You lied. And now you're held accountable for it. That's why they lost. That's why they lost all the houses. That's how they didn't get to take over and continue this thing. Now, is it a narrow win? Yeah, it's a tipping point. But every single victory has some turning point where it starts pivoting. There's a lot of enthusiasm by people I meet that are conservative and or just don't give a rat's. Normal people who don't get into politics, who don't want to get excited about it because it's not pretty exciting. It's actually pretty nerdy. Growing up, I don't know anybody that cared about politics. Nobody that I grew up around was a political figure of any kind. And the people that did, you're like, nah, whatever, nerd. We're not into that. And now everybody talks about it all the time. Why? Because they went from this. It went from politics is happening and you live your life. And they went like, the politics people were like, oh, well, like we could run your life for you. Wouldn't you like that? And you're like, no, I'm just doing my thing. And then all of a sudden you look over and there's this monstrous entity, the federal government that employs more people than any other entity in the world. And they take more of your money and they are more in your business. They are telling you how to raise your kids. They're telling you if you can go to church or not. And we're like, yo, hold on a second. Where did you come from? What this wave popped up. It's like a rogue wave in time. It's been building. It's been building since the 19-teens. For those of you that follow this program, you know that 1913 was a big turning point in this country. And that's before any of us were born. That's another thing we talk about in this program all the time. It's like, just because government doesn't do everything evil, it's always the worst solution because eventually it's a huge wave that you didn't see coming and it wants to run all your crap. Let's talk about Biden doing something that's not terrible. Let's do that. We never do that here. I don't know why there's a picture of a lizard, but this was the story. It's NPR. Okay. Biden creates 2 new national monuments, setting a conservation record. Congratulations, Joe Biden. You did something. Did he do it? Really? Did someone else write it for him? Yeah, probably. Okay. The Chuckwalla National Monument has now been named. The Satilia, I don't know how to pronounce that, Highlands National Monuments have been named. They're all in California, it sounds like. They basically took over. There's a dormant volcano in one. There's some Joshua Tree pieces in another that's part of the National Park Service. You might wonder, hey, Kyle, what's the difference between a national monument and a national park? That's a great question. It is a great question. I also had this question this morning. The difference is one requires an act of Congress. In other words, the people's representatives have to name something a national park. That's just the way that it works. A national monument is something that is declared essentially by executive order, and it falls underneath the Department of the Interior. A lot of times it's under the Bureau of Land Management, the other BLM, the BLM that most of us don't hate. The reason we don't hate BLM, Bureau of Land Management, is because it allows places that are funded and owned and for the use of the people. I used to live right next to a national monument, and for whatever it's worth, it came in under the Obama era. Okay, Barack Obama's time in office set that up. Here, I'm going to show you what it looks like. That was my backyard. I am not even exaggerating. My house was like maybe 300-400 yards away from where those rocks were. Maybe it was a little bit further than that, but it was like within a mile. That was my backyard. That was the view I had that you're seeing on the screen right now. That view was when I was grilling meat in Las Cruces, New Mexico. We were living on a dream of a property. I was talking to my girls about it last night. I said, you girls remember the rock wall we had that you guys would climb up and walk around? And they were like, yeah, I remember that. I said, do you remember the monsters on it? Because we had tarantulas and we had these things called vinegaroons, which are these like acid spitting scorpion looking things. I mean, there's some weird stuff in New Mexico, folks. And they have a thing called monster season. That's Kyle Seraphin's term for it. They call it monsoon season. But all the animals get driven out of all the areas and they climbed up them on our walls. We'd have it covered with scorpions and like all the scariest crap that you'd ever see. Bats were up in our belfry. We literally had an entryway. You'd walk in, there was a bat. I caught a bat one time being eaten by a tarantula. Like there's a huge tarantula the size of my hand eating a bat. And I was like, oh man, this is weird. We are living in some wild times with a beautiful, raw and rugged thing behind us. And it was all national monument space. And it was declared by Barack Obama. A good thing that he did, I think, at the end of the day. It was 500,000+ acres for Americans to go park on the side of the road with no rules, just like don't destroy it. You could drive off on the dirt fire roads and you could just park there and camp. And people did. I would go to work sometimes at the Indian reservation. I'd be driving out. I'm going to actually leave it back on the screen because I love it. Literally, like right on the foot of those mountains, I would be driving, look over to my side, and there'd be people just doing a little campfire, you know, or they'd have a little grill out. They'd be making bacon and eggs first thing in the morning. It'd be 6 a.m. I'm driving out to go in the middle of nowhere, and they're hanging out in the middle of nowhere, just experiencing the thing that Americans do, which is like not government boot on you, government preserving a beautiful space for you to stay in. So good on you, Joe Biden. Good on you. He set the record for the amount of space that it was, and it's a lot of space. It really is. It's 674 million total acres of land and water of national monuments and other designations protected for American people's use. Good stuff. Let's call it what it is. Now, this story, you guys might not be shocked to find out, comes from NPR. Maybe you are shocked, but it's positive about Joe Biden, and it comes from NPR. And you're saying, Kyle, have you ever listened to NPR? Do you have any idea? Like, everybody is a trans person. I know, it's NPR. So there's a trans story here too. Come on, it's NPR. The two stories back to back look like this. The Pentagon just agreed to settle a historic lawsuit for LGBTQ plus veterans over discharge status. This was released yesterday. Everybody that the loony left cares about have to be one of these protected groups. It's protected lands and it's protected veterans, and these veterans are gay and or whatever else, alternative sexualities. Here's the thing I always had with it. I don't think they should settle like this. I know they will, because Biden's going to get out and Trump wouldn't do it. But the reason why I know they'll do it and why they shouldn't is because when you were in the military at the time, just before I got in, the don't ask, don't tell policy was shut your mouth. It doesn't matter if you're gay. And they didn't get rid of people for being gay. And before that, it was you cannot be gay and join us. You cannot be a lesbian or bisexual. You can't have whatever else. You can't dress and drag because you're an American service member. It is a privilege to serve this country. You don't have a right to do that. If you sign up and you meet all the qualifications and you agree to all the things and you don't lie on a federal form saying that you are having one of these sexualities, then you can come into this job. But there's no right to it. So why the hell are we settling a lawsuit? The lawsuit is not a little bit, by the way. It's talking about 35,000 veterans. There's a ton of money in this that comes out of our pocket because they lied or they didn't act appropriately within the situation that they were there. The don't ask, don't tell policy started in 93 under the Clinton administration. That's old. I mean, this is prior to me getting into high school. So some of you probably were in high school at that time and you remember it. I remember it changing too. What it changed is it said that they could be honorably discharged. It was supposed to change the characterization of their paperwork and they could get veteran status. Look, if you violated the rule of the job, screw you, man. Why do you get special treatment on that after the fact? Because Joe Biden's in office. Yeah, that's what's going on. It is what it is. All right, let's talk about certification. This is that turning point. We've all felt it. This is the reality of November 5th coming home to roost. It looks like this. It looks like Kamala Harris, the woman who is the vice president, who comes in to accept the certification, the joint session of Congress. They certified the 2024 election victory of Donald Trump. And it is exactly 4 years after the so-called insurrection at the Capitol, the so-called Capitol siege. I found out from FBI agents yesterday that the FBI is still sending out leads and trying to prosecute American citizens, asking people, FBI agents, to open up cases on these people. All right? They are still asking for that. This is what total victory looks like. That is a woman who failed. It is a liberal beast slayed by Donald Trump, to use the words of the Independent that we just quoted. Mike Johnson, who also had to basically bend the knee to Donald Trump. Mike Johnson, who doesn't seem very principled to me. We all kind of thought he might be okay as a human being. He doesn't seem to be. He feels kind of slimy. He might as well be Chuck Schumer to me. But he's online and he's doing what he's got to do because otherwise Donald Trump's going to come after him, and rightly so. Is Trump the hero of this story all the time? Probably not. Let's be realistic. He's going to get some things wrong. It's the nature of the beast. We know he did it wrong in the first 4 years sometimes. But he did it right sometimes. And overwhelmingly, I know this one thing. My family would not have lost our job, our home. We wouldn't have lost that beautiful view, which it really was beautiful. It wasn't that expensive compared to what it is today. You know, we'd not have lost that all this. I know they didn't, because Donald Trump didn't meddle in state affairs. He didn't go out there and say, oh, well, the federal government's going to shove this down your throat. It just wasn't the same animal. And when Democrats came in, they did. I got a couple things I want to show you. I want to show you. Let's see here. I got this video. There's no audio to it, so I'll talk for it. You've probably never seen this before, by the way. If you saw the video that we did that went on viral on Twitter the other day, this is a video from my windshield. It is a equivalent of a dash cam. It's my phone recording on the Afghan refugee camp outside of Fort Bliss, or on Fort Bliss. I guess it was on the edges of Fort Bliss, which is just outside of El Paso. This was in my AOR-ish. It was like a combined area. Fort Bliss has pieces that go into New Mexico as well. So that's my partner's vehicle in front of me. And we're driving through the Afghan refugee camp. I just want you to look at how barren this thing is. And as we drive through here, you're going to see people in wild Afghan garb just cruising on the side of the road. This was not America. It didn't feel like America. They didn't know the rules of America. It looks like a third world nation. It felt like a third world nation. And because I tell you that because my buddy who spent a lot of time in both Africa and in other theaters as a Green Beret, he's the guy in front of me on that vehicle. It felt like being in Afghanistan. He's like, dude, it smelled like Afghanistan. There was human feces all up inside the road, every side. There were people just walking out and crapping in the desert, 20 feet off a paved road. All these people that you're seeing walking are all Afghan refugees. Nobody's telling them what to do. Those fences, by the way, are to keep people out of certain little military areas. They can walk right off that base, and they did by the hundreds. When you hear people like Sean Ryan talking about the threat that's out there, and Sarah Adams, who used to be a CIA targeter, talking to you about how like we brought in all these people from the country, and that Al Qaeda and the ISIS folks are trying to cooperate and bring terror attacks in here, whether they be invisible bombs because the vests don't get picked up by the X-ray machines, or whether they are other types of terror cells, or they're smuggling stuff across the border. I'm showing you it. Who the hell are these people? I know that we don't know because I was the one interviewing them when they were doing crimes, and they were doing crimes on a federal installation. And we didn't even do anything about it then because there was too many of them. They were beating the girlfriends. They were beating up women that they didn't even know. They were trying to make them wives and so on. This is the legacy of the Biden administration. It's just chaos. It's terrible ideas and tons of government spending. It's a lot of money spent to do something that was basically the worst possibility, bringing in 100,000 people that don't understand what America's about. We could have brought in 1 million Canadians and been better. We brought in 100,000 people from Afghanistan, some of whom spoke English and had skills, and I was excited to meet them. It was very impressive. It came up in the chat, so I'll throw it up here and chat about it for just a second. The question was, were there Afghans raping boys? Absolutely. Specifically, there's a group called the Coast Force Province, KFP, Coast Force Province. Coast Province Force, KPF, that's their name, I think. Guys, check me on there. If you guys serve with these guys, you know what I'm talking about. They're a militia group. They were out in the hills. They had a chai boy culture, which is to say they would take young boys and make them sex slaves. And they grabbed a dude either in Qatar or Germany. It was hard to say which. The kid was confused and he was beaten up pretty good. And we had one major investigation. I had to do it through an interpreter. I brought him to a DHS official who was also a first sergeant in the Air Force. And we got that guy out of there. It was the last time. And when I went to go retrieve his personal items with him, with an armed guard, by the way, we had multiple Air Force security forces. They were like females, which is really weird, in full battle rattle in the United States with their like M4s and stuff. We rolled into these huts and we grabbed his stuff, his backpack and whatever else he had. He'd been separated forcibly from his brothers. These dudes were a bunch of killers. They're like in their 30s. They've been fighting wars their whole lives. And of course, they were assets for the CIA. I'm not saying CIA stuff like Ryan Mattis style. I mean, like the CIA guys were there on the base, giving them electronics and money and favors and whatever, because they were still getting intel from them. So they were trading intel for money and favors in the United States. And these dudes had a sex slave on an American Air Force base that we separated from him. We got him to talk about it. It was very difficult because there's a massive, first of all, he's a teenage boy who's getting raped by a bunch of grown men. He was like 17 or 18 years old. They lied and said he was 19. They forged his paperwork, brought him in, and then kept him under guard in their tents on a U.S. military installation. And we separated that kid out. And we sent him off to his family. He had family in the United States. His uncle called me and owned like a carpet store in Virginia or something. Like his uncle was a productive member of U.S. society, came here and did the things we want people to do when they enter this country. Start a business, go out there and make a profit center, have employees. And that guy took on like a couple of kids that were like in their 20s that were coming from Afghanistan. They were expecting this kid to show up who was 17, and he never did. He just ended up being raped by these dudes on a base that we were in charge of. It was Holloman Air Force Base. I'm not making any of this stuff up, and the FBI knows it. This was part of the allegations that I made to Congress in October of 2021. So when I tell you I'm a little hot about this stuff and it's kind of personal, this is part of it. I encourage all of you to go look at this kind of goof, like this crazy video that I was able to post. This is the reason why I was suspended. A lot of you guys don't know this. And like I said, this is more personal than not. So my apologies. This is a personal piece. This came out of the call. I taped a 68-minute phone call with the FBI's inspection division, and it was the last time they reached out to me. You probably don't know that. If you're newish to the program, you don't know this. Here's what happened. I went to Congress with information. I also told the people in the FBI's Human Resources Department that I wasn't going to get the COVID shot and I wouldn't take a nasal swab every 72 hours. When that happened, I was denied a religious accommodation by someone called Spencer Evans. He was the Deputy Assistant Director of Human Resources for the FBI in Washington, D.C. Do you know who Spencer Evans is today? He's the chief agent. He's the special agent in charge of the Las Vegas field office, the one that is investigating Matthew, what is his name? Lillisberger, the Green Beret. He's the one who runs the office that is investigating the explosion at Trump Tower with the Cybertruck. All of these things are always connected. God has a strange way of weaving this web. I want you guys to hear the suspension call. I'm going to give you a little bit of my personal background and the way that I talked to a lady who basically investigated me for nothing. I might even play some of the body cam footage because I put it out on social media this morning, and I'd love it if you guys shared it. I would love it because it's really, really telling that if an agency is willing to do that to you, it's the reason we need a Kash Patel. It's how I know Adam Schiff is a piece of garbage when he's talking bad about a guy that I would consider a friend. If Kash Patel asked me to do something, I would do it. Because when he showed up, when it wasn't politically advantageous for him, and he backed my family, he backed Garrett O'Boyle's family, he backed FBI whistleblowers' family, at like some political cost to himself, when people like Jim Jordan wouldn't do it, when they were scared because we were too politically hot, because I say things like this, and I don't shy away from the truth. All right, here's the call.
Do you know that I don't even know what the allegation against me is? They're just...
No, the one for me, I have there's one allegation, and it's in the paperwork, the letter that you signed. It's right in the sort of top.
It says that I was unprofessional. Yeah, it says I was unprofessional to a police officer and my coworker. Is that correct?
That's it.
But that's not a specific anything. Like the only time I've talked to a cop was on body cam. I assume you have that footage, or do you not?
Yes.
You have. The footage speaks for itself, so that's a case closed. That's the end of it. There's literally nothing there. Nobody can argue otherwise.
796. I'm familiar with a gray pickup truck with black wheels and a black camper in the desert area.
Copy, sir. Please, gray pickup truck.
How you doing? Not bad. Hey, I'm not sure if this is county or city, but everybody's freaking out over there at the school, man.
It's
county. You can hear it over there like nobody's business.
Okay.
I know there's a range on the other side of town and it's far away.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if you can go further in the desert or something, I get it. You're shooting against a berm. You're not shooting towards the school or anything, but it creates issues. So what department are you with?
I'm with the FBI.
Okay. Yeah, it's just probably not the best place to be shooting.
So, I mean, people shoot out here all the time. Is it just because it's at school or what?
Well, it creates issues, yeah. I'm not saying that you would, but some people are responsible.
So I guess the question, so first of all, I'm positive this is county land.
Okay.
Right? I'm more than 300 yards away. In fact, what is that, like 150 is the requirement, or 100?
I don't even know exactly what it is, to be quite honest.
Whatever it is, I can reach that, and I know that we're 800 yards away from the school minimum, yeah?
Okay.
So legally speaking, I'm still within the range.
Okay.
I'm out here to work. I'm out here to train. I get some time off, so I'm kind of using it.
Okay.
I'm not trying to create an issue for you, but I'm well within the range. Like
I get that, but you have to understand where we're coming from. I mean, it's one of those things where
no, I totally get it, but I'm just saying if we're gonna, I don't have the time to drive out there.
Okay, here's the deal. I was not the most eloquent person on there because I was caught off guard. But what I knew is that a cop was going to ask me to do something when he walked up. I knew he was going to ask me to leave, and I knew that I wasn't going to do it. And I explained this in some video. I knew that I was not going to do that on purpose. Because if I ceded territory to a local cop who didn't even have jurisdiction in the county, he was a city cop, by the way. Nice guy, super nice guy. I got no problem with what he did, per se. If I ceded that territory, I was ceding it not for just me. I was ceding it for all my neighbors, for all the people that want to go shoot there, that are just Americans, that can go on BLM land, like we talked about earlier, and do the things that you're allowed to do. I was 860-something yards away from the nearest building. The state law says 150 yards from an occupied structure is a safe shot. Anything else can be charged. There also is an exemption for law enforcement officers, by the way. I would not be covered. I was not something that had to be dealt with under any of it. Anybody who's seen this knows. Anybody who's a cop sees this, they're like, that's a professional interaction. I'm going to show you how I know that, because we're going to get to the point where the cop actually kind of does the final little bit, And when you see the final interaction there, it's no big deal. I'm going to try to get to the right spot where, because I want you to see the closing of this interaction. It starts off with him saying something. It ends with him leaving in a friendly way. He actually he stops the conversation and starts to leave. And then he was like, yeah, man, like this. And so I'll play it for you real quick. I want you to see it.
It was polite. It was courteous. It was two professionals, somebody who knows a lot more about firearms law than the guy who I was talking to. I'm a massive advocate when it comes to that civil liberty. And so there was under no circumstances was I going to cede that territory, not just for me. It had nothing, like very little to do with me specifically, but for my friends who like to shoot, who live in New Mexico. And it's a different world. Like I assume you live in DC, and I don't know if you've ever lived out in the West, but public land is a very different animal. And so are public land states like New Mexico and Wyoming and Idaho and Montana. There are places that are owned by the people. Like we were right next to land owned by America. And there are rules on the BLM land, and there are rules of what you're allowed to do in America that are very different than shooting in public land. There was no report from yesterday either. There's no report ever because there's no law being broken. So the FBI is outside of its purview on that one.
Through all of this, and I will capture all of your points in this statement, okay?
Yes, I understand that that's the goal.
And yeah, all right. So
Yeah, it's not. Well, I was standing out there and I just hear pop, 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 and I was like, God dang it. So here we go. All right. So anyway, hey,
on the
you have
same
good,
team.
Sounds good. Have a good one. All right. Be safe.
To play in a second.
Name and all advice.
Okay.
An 8, no report.
10-8, no report. If you don't know what 10-8 means, it means you're going back into service. No report, self-explanatory. There is no report of this incident. I found it as a call-out number when I went and requested the body cam footage. There's no report written because he didn't need to, because there was no violation of law. He self-dispatched out there. I do know that this is self-serving to play for you, but I find it like engrossing whenever I hear it myself. And maybe it's because I'm narcissistic. I hope not. I think it's compelling for people to understand how little the interaction was. I lost my job over that, folks. I lost my house. I lost my career. I lost my pension. I lost my benefits. My kids lost their friends. We left everything behind because that happened. That was the incident. And if you think that was the incident, of course, you're crazy. That's not the issue. The issue is I told the FBI I wasn't going to get COVID shots and that I was going to bring information like I showed you in Afghanistan or the Afghanistan that we imported in. I brought that to Congress's attention. We got a phone call that went to the Hoover building, came out to an agent in the field that had 27 years of experience, both as a lawyer and as an FBI agent. And he called me direct and said, I got a phone call from the chief division counsel in your office. And he said, I've got a whistleblower and a COVID vax refuser. What should we do with him? They were looking for guidance. And I said, oh, that's a shame. What'd you do? And he said, I told him to promote you, which we both thought was really funny, because we both knew that they were going to get rid of me. You know what they did next? That guy also exposed the fact that the FBI was investigating Catholics in the Richmond field office. He brought that to my attention, and they got rid of him too. 27 years on the job, and they took his shit and they threw it in his front yard. I got pictures of him with his stuff that was in his office for 11 years that he worked, and they threw it on the ground. And they crapped on him, and they let him retroactively retire. But they wanted the optic of saying, if you screw with us, we're going to take you out. That's the animal that we're talking about. That's the executive assistant directors and the assistant directors and all the scumbags that exist on the 7th floor and below in senior management for the FBI, including the people that are running the field office in Vegas right now. That's why Kash Patel is important. That's why Adam Schiff needs to be put on his ass when he says that, I'm not going to tell you whether or not I can work with the guy. We know you can't. And regular Americans look at this and they actually do see injustice, I think. They don't have any other choice. Because that was an infinitely relevant, like how many people that are lower middle class, that are in a working class environment have had a bad interaction with a cop? It wouldn't go nearly as well as what I did. The reason why is because I was armed and I was a federal agent at the same time. And I knew that. And I took that responsibility very seriously. Because if I rolled over and said, yeah, you can tell me to do stuff when you have no legal authority to do so, and I'm going to follow and comply with it, then we're screwed as a constitutional republic. And it was never about you, my friends. I didn't know you then. It was about my neighbors and it was about my kids. It was about we're not going to roll over because we have to be able to be citizens, and citizens do not accept subject status from people that are in charge of our government, even at the local level. Because if you have a badge and a gun, you are representing authorities. And I had the same badge and the same gun, except from a higher tier. And I was polite, and I said no. And I encourage you to do the same thing. And if that means you got to go to jail, tag me, man. Have your family reach out to me. It's info@KyleSeraphin.com if you guys get in a bind because you did something very simple where you were nonviolent. You can obviously tell I'm not violent. I'm putting my hands up, but I got a gun on me right there. And did that guy seem concerned? No. I'm bona fide. I'm vetted. I had the ability to do that. And if you get in a situation where you roll over on a cop like that, where you don't do the thing you can do, shame on you. There's other stuff I wanted to cover today. We'll cover it tomorrow. Before I forget, because you guys always give me a hard time about this, and you guys being the folks that are watching live, I'm going to be on Timcast, the Culture War. I'm going out on Friday, and it'll be George Hill as well. I think you guys might want to tune in for that. I might even discontinue our Friday show because of that, because I'm not 100% sure that I can pull it off. We might do one taped. So if you get one on Friday, it's taped, and then you can watch us. It's like 10 or 11 o'clock Eastern time, Culture War, Timcast. But I'm going to go out there and touch a bigger audience because it's fun to do so. That's happening. Let's do a couple of reminders. Reminder why we got so radicalized. This is one really funny little TikTok friend of mine who is in the government and has been irritated by these phone calls. He played this out.
Remember, if someone dies suddenly, it's not appropriate to ask about their immunization status. That information was only relevant for getting into restaurants, pubs, gyms, and keeping your job.
Right? We remember this. This is why Donald Trump wins. This is why he's got to do better this time around. I think that he will. We're showing some wins. We're seeing Canada fold. We're seeing Trudeau fold. We're seeing a lot of this stuff moving the direction Americans hope it would. At least I am. And I think that's a net positive. Let me just give you a little bit of humor, because that's the way we do it here. We like to do a little bit of humor. If you're not familiar with our program, we do a thing that I call the palate cleanser, because news is heavy, man. And so a lot of this stuff is, you guys can tell I'm the same kind of guy. Like, I need to have a joke about it. I need to walk away on a laugh. We're on the same team, bro. I want to walk away on that. So we all have this sense. This is probably my favorite comedian, although I bet we politically disagree. This is Bill Burr. It's got a little spicy language in it, so be aware of that. This is a fantastic, funny little clip about the difference between someone like all of us who have all the same sick thoughts, especially those of us who served in the military or law enforcement, what he calls everyday psychopaths. It's really dark. This is a dark way of looking at it. It's the difference between real people who get along that have weird thoughts and people who go do what that guy in New Orleans did, which is in like stark relief right now. Enjoy.
You ever drive down the street and see like 30 people up on a sidewalk and you just think, right? You don't do it. You just think it. That's what's like separates the psychos from the functioning psychos, right? Psychos, they just think it, fuck it, they do it. They get the wipers going, they make a day out of it, right? But as a functioning psycho, not only do you not do it, you actually analyze it. Like, man, if I just leave my hand right here, nobody knows who I am. I move it 2 degrees over here, I'm on the cover of Newsweek. I am instantly famous, right? Right here, nobody knows me. Just a regular jackass like, hey, Bill, you want to come to the cookout? You know, maybe you could bring that potato salad. It was such a big hit last year. One of the most horrific scenes we've seen in years. Bodies just strewn about.
All right, my friends, just be the functioning psycho. If you're going to be a psycho at all, which some of us, we can't help it. That's just the way our brains are wired. Functioning psychos for all, which is to say regular people who agree. We all have thoughts. How we act on them is how we're going to be judged. Keep your hand in the middle of the wheel. Drive down the center. Be safe out there. It's going to get strange in this year. God bless all of you that listen. Thanks for sharing it. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. All those things. Actually, let me throw it on the screen here. You can always find the podcast, rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. That's where we live. We're also on X. Follow me at Kyle Seraphin if you do not normally. Locals, if you want to join the subscription and be part of the community to talk about it, KyleSeraphin.com. And if you're watching or you're listening right now on Spotify, I really appreciate you guys growing the Spotify audience. Share it with a friend. A lot of people have Spotify and they haven't heard of us. You guys can share us out there, and that's how we're going to grow. That's how we're going to keep talking sense. So much appreciation. Again, this is a year of gratitude and discernment, so I'm going to keep saying it. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.